2018 F150. Gotta have a 10-speed pulled out. That's what we're gonna do now. Let's get it in the air. All right, here we are with it up in the air. We got a new cooler on there. We got a carry-out transmission that the customer came and got and put it in themselves. So I don't know what I'm about to find here. Got a stacked pump, I think. They didn't put the torque converter in right. So we are gonna take this thing back apart and see what the deal is. First thing I'm gonna do, skid plate, put a tripod, get the cross member out. Transmission mount nuts, 2 of them. Take the weight off the cross member, get it out of there. All right, before you take those last 2 all the way out, there's a 10mm right up there to get to the heat shield, and 1 on the other side up there to get that heat shield off. So take those 2 10s off before you try to pull it down, otherwise it's gonna snag on the heat shields. All right, after you get that cross member out of there, what we're gonna do is take a step back and we're gonna take this drive shaft out. So we got 12mm 12 points. I have a special socket for those. Impact socket and 2 13s for the carrier bearing. This is the socket. It's a Sunex. I don't know if you can see with the light the way it is, but it's a Sunex 12mm wobble impact 12 point. Usually this thing hangs down and this is stuck, so I leave that like that and hit this like this. And then it just pulls out. All right, drive shaft's out. Next thing that's gonna happen is this exhaust is gonna come loose. So this bracket right here, this transmission mount can be a pain. It's 2 15s up here. You see those 2 15s, black ones, and then 2 more on this side, right here. Problem is the exhaust doesn't want to come down low enough to let this thing come back. So that's why they split this. But what I do is take these exhaust bolts loose right here, which there's some new ones in there because those break. And then take the ones up front loose, right there and there. And then what'll happen is the whole exhaust will hang down. And when the whole exhaust hangs down, then you can just pull this mount right off of there. Long extension, wobble 15. And you know what? We need to unplug O2 sensors before we do that so don't hang on them. O2 sensors are tucked up in here next to the transmission. Heat shield's always in the way. And sometimes you gotta get a pickup in there. Hard to get to up in there. But you see, I just take a pick and pull up on this. And then pull it out, pull up on it, pull it out. Okay. O2 sensors unplugged. Now we go for the 15s. Okay, well, that's not good. Stripped out. So your choices are get a torch and cut the nut, or pry on it while you're taking it off. Thinking about cutting it, but I'm thinking about trying prying one more time. All right, I'm gonna cut it. All right, you can see what's happening right there. The nut is just stripping on the stud, and there is no, it won't come off no matter how hard I pry, it's just spinning. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna cut the bottom part of the nut off with a torch and just pop it off there. The stud's already ruined, so I'm gonna put a new stud in it anyway. So here we go. All right, so here we are. Got a little torch action up in there. Cut that nut off. Now we can get all that out, then I'll replace the stud later. So now what we're gonna do is finish pulling this exhaust down out of here. Gotta take these two 15s here and two on the other side out, and then it'll come down. One bolt too. You gotta watch out this doesn't fall on your head. All right, now that you got that off, now you can just slide this off. Two sensors out of the way. Uh-oh. Okay, exhaust is down. All right, after you get that exhaust out of there, boy, it opens things up a lot. So now what we're gonna do is get this drive shaft out. 10s, and then we're gonna get the starter off. On this truck, you got one here with a ground wire nut and then the bolt, and then that bolt right there. And the starter comes back down out of the way. All right, so after you have the starter off, you're gonna come over here, and there is, right here, this plastic piece. Pull that out to get to the torque converter nuts. All right, now you'll be able to see, bam, you can get right in here to your plate and get your torque converter nuts off. And I just turned the motor by the front of the crankshaft right here. There's one. Probably gonna be 4 of them. All right, after that's all out of there, you got torque converter nuts off. I'm gonna put a jack under the transmission, and we're gonna take this tripod out of here and take the transfer case off, which is these reverse torques. Okay, it's a reverse Torx 14. First time you ever feel these, you'll be surprised because they feel like cardboard. And unhook your transfer case motor. Jack this up and get a buddy to help you check it out. All right, so that's out of there. We're way opened up now. We only got belt housing bolts, bam, 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 bam. And the main plug, unplug that. And they put the aftermarket dipstick in these when they did them, which is good. It doesn't take that stupid little plastic stick. Now you can check it from up there. So we're gonna do belt housing bolts, and then we're gonna unhook this cooler, and then we're gonna pull this thing out. 13mm wobble socket with a long extension. I also have a couple 13s up here in the front holding this heat shield. I guess it's not a heat shield, it's a plate between the motor and the transmission. Okay, let's get this cooler off. Really, this will be the only mess I have. That's why I wait until the very end. Try to get most of it. Pull it out of the transmission. And that's where you have a little bit of a mess. Okay. Now we're out of here. I think there's going to be a problem when we go to take that out. Well, right off, I don't see anything crazy. Pump still looks good in there. I'll have to pull it apart and see what was happening. All right, I don't know what they did to fix it, but I'm going to show you some tips on how to put this thing back in. All right, so when you're throwing this thing back in here, the studs on the torque converter on Fords, they can be kind of hard to get lined up with the holes in the flywheel. So people like to try to force them together and do all kind of crazy stuff. So I'm going to show you guys how I put this up in here and line these up without breaking stuff. First thing we're going to do is get it all up in there real close, all the way forward as far as it can go just by hand. And then we're going to put a bolt in one side, probably right here, real loose, and then I'll show you how I get it lined up. All right, now I'm going to take this bolt and put it in this top right here. And I'm going to push this, I'm going to get that one lined up. Get that one. All right, now I got that just a couple threads to hold it so it doesn't come back, and now I'm going to line up this other side. Okay, well, I got really lucky. I guessed right, and I had the studs just automatically line up. You see the stud in there? But if it doesn't line up, this is what I do. I push the back of the transmission over like this, and then you can see there's the stud. And if the stud and the hole are not lined up, then I take a flathead screwdriver and I turn the torque converter until it lines up with the hole. And then you come back like this, and you push it together until you can reach your finger in here and you feel the stud. Oh, you can almost see it. I can feel the stud is about to come through that hole. So then I just give it a good push in there, make sure it's in all the way, and then put the bolts in. But don't force anything together with the bolts. And those two bolts are the two that are on the dowels. If you see the dowels for the transmission, those are the first two I put in. So when you start to tighten that and push that together, it'll go on the dowels and everything will go exactly where it's supposed to go. Make sure none of your wires are stuck between the bell housing and the engine. Hey, you can easily feel on the thing, on the back of that the bolts are through, the studs are through. So now we're going to go ahead, tighten it down. Okay, now what you want to make sure is that the torque converter is loose in there still and it's not tight. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a ratchet on the crankshaft, which I have to anyway to put the nuts on, and then you'll hear if it's loose, it'll ting 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 ting. Okay, that's perfect. That means it's not bound up in any way, and it's good to go ahead and go forward and tighten that thing all the way tight. All right, the rest of it's pretty self-explanatory. Bolting everything back together, bolting everything else back together is pretty easy. It's just transfer case, cross member, put the exhaust back in, cooler back on. So drive shafts, there's just normal stuff, but that is really the hard part of putting it back together. So I just wanted to include that in the video. All right, everybody, thanks for watching. See you on the next one.